Hi. Well, here we are with the first essay of the summer, Romanticism. The Romanticism essay prompt. Now, please choose one of the following topics. So there's 4 bullet points, as you see. Choose one of them. Do not try to choose all of them. That's not what I want. And construct an argumentative essay based on research and your own close reading of the primary text. Now, when I say primary text, by the way, I'm talking about the original material, the actual poetry that we're working on, or the prose passage that we're talking about. Here's the first question. Pick either William Blake or William Wordsworth and describe how his poetry serves to bring together humanity and nature. Use at least 2 of the poems from the syllabus if you choose Blake, or 1 poem from the syllabus if you choose Wordsworth. Okay, so that question deals with some of our earliest works, right? And the role of nature is critical in the Romantics, but especially in Blake and Wordsworth. They're both very heavily into it. Second question. How does Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Woman anticipate the suffrage movement of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the second wave women's movement of the 1970s, and today's third wave women's movement? You may also wish to consider in what ways have the women's rights movements moved away from Wollstonecraft. Okay, so by the way, suffrage refers to the right to vote, right? So as you should all know, women did not automatically have the right to vote in this nation, and it did not happen until the 20th century. Next question. How has the figure of the Byronic hero influenced later, including contemporary, meaning right now, figures, both fictional and historical? Cite specific examples and how their lineage can be traced to Byron. Okay, now our textbook talks about the Byronic hero in the prefatory material for Lord Byron. The Byronic hero is a type of hero, quite different from, say, a superhero like Superman, right? Whereas normal heroes, or the traditional hero, I should say, was seen as a warrior, often, typically, embodying certain virtues of a culture and a society. The Byronic hero is very, very different. Now, sometimes people call the Byronic hero an anti-hero. They're not exactly the same, okay? And there's key elements that are different between the anti-hero and the Byronic hero, so don't just flip to that. That's not going to be very accurate. Fourth question. John Keats coined the term negative capability and described it as a goal for writers, claiming that, for example, this was a great achievement of Shakespeare's. Examine one of the odes of Keats and examine how Keats attempts to reach negative capability. You may also wish to consider whether this should, in fact, be a standard for greatness in a writer. Now, the textbook talks about negative capability, and I have a brief video on Canvas in our Romantics module in which I discuss negative capability of Keats. But essentially, the simplest way to put it is that we really lose the sense of the author. That is, the author is not a personality that intrudes on the text. Right? So Keats talks about this idea of like holding contraries in mind without reaching for a resolution, being able to do that. So there's a lot of things about opposites, if you will. right? The essential idea is that Keats and many other writers tried to avoid overly influencing their work with their personality. Now, of course, there are many other writers who do the exact opposite, which is why the final sentence of that question is there too. You may wish to consider whether this is a standard of greatness. Now, the paper is due to be submitted to Canvas by Monday, July the 1st, 11:59 p.m. Be sure to follow the out-of-class essay guidelines for matters of form and style, which is on Canvas under Handouts. Use correct MLA documentation as described in the MLA for Literature class handout, which is in the same place. There are various MLA sources, some links that you can go to on Canvas web links. Or if perchance you have a copy of the MLA handbook itself, you could use that. It's currently in the 9th edition. If you have the 8th edition, that would be totally fine because there's not a lot of difference between the 8th and the 9th in terms of the form. Once you get earlier than the 8th edition, however, there are significant differences and that should not be used. Be sure to include a word count at the end of your essay. I always like to see that word count so that you make sure that you have met the number of words that the essay needs to be at least, and that I know that you've met it. And trust me, don't fib. It's really easy for me to tell. Basically, Canvas will tell me how long your paper is anyway, even if you don't. But this way you'll know that you've met the standard also. So remember, you must meet minimum requirements, including the word count, the sources, and subject matter. No late essays will be accepted without a verifiable medical or legal excuse. I don't want to hear people saying, oh, I got sick. I don't have a doctor's note. I just got sick. Well, then people get sick all the time when something's due, right? I'm not playing that game. Now, the minimum requirements for this essay. It needs to be at least 1,000 words. It can go up to about 1,400 or so. I'm not really picky on the upper limit. Although I would caution against going, crazy like 2,000, 3,000 words. That's not usually going to work in your benefit unless it's so perfectly wonderful that I don't even notice you have a long paper. But the minimum number, 1,000 words, that's pretty firm. If you are less than 1,000 words in your essay, you have not done enough work. There's much more to say. I know what these questions are. I know what they involve. It's pretty hard to imagine doing a very good essay in less than 1,000 words. Now, you need to have citations from at least 4 different sources. One of these sources, of course, must be the primary text. Unless, of course, you're doing the Blake piece in which you have 2 primary texts. Okay, but that means you're going to have more of the rest anyway. Now, 2 of your sources, you must have at least 2 sources that are from scholarly work, such as dissertations, peer-reviewed journal articles, or university press books. In other words, I want you to look at what the people are saying about these works, what the scholars are saying, the profs, And then a 4th source can be anything of your own choosing, but it needs to be a credible analytical source in its own right. It could be a good article, but it's not peer-reviewed. It could be from a good book, but it's not a university press book. Okay. It could be another type of source, but it should still be a credible analytical source. Let me caution against just picking some random website with not a lot of credibility to it that just says something, has no author, has no background. That kind of thing is not what I'm looking for here. I'm looking for good scholarly work. Now, your textbook will only count as the primary text, although you may certainly use editorial materials in your essay. Okay, so Greenblatt and his compatriots, they have some really great materials in the textbook, and you may use that, but that still counts as only part of your primary text, really. Okay. In other words, you don't get away with just using the textbook alone to do this assignment. And as I always say to all my students, you may have more than the minimums. In this case, more than 4 sources. You can have 5, 6, whatever. Whatever you come across that makes your essay work, you can use. And again, please, MLA format and presentation and documentation, including correct works cited. This is an English class. This is a 200 level class. I expect there to be a pretty decent MLA. And if you're not familiar with MLA, I'm sorry you didn't get that in your previous classes. You should have, but maybe you didn't. You'll just have to work extra hard to make that up. But we do have, as I said, the handouts that should be able to help. Plus, you can always shoot me a question if there's something very specific. Don't just say, I don't know what I'm doing. That's not very specific, right? But if you have a specific problem with a specific source, I'm more than happy to, help you out with that. Speaking of which, if you have any questions about the paper whatsoever, please do not hesitate to shoot me a message in the inbox or to my district email account. Love to make sure that everybody is working correctly. I don't want people to feel confused or abandoned. You're not abandoned, okay? I know the online environment tends to lead to that to a certain extent, but I don't want you to feel that here. Okay? Good luck.